Now, not only is that a fact, so obviously Mrs. Angelini was in situ at the time, but we also have a letter written by Anne and Hollie's parliamentary representative in the Scottish Parliament, a man called Brian Adam, dated the 27th of October 2000, 3 months after Mrs. Angelini took office, with a letter specifically addressed to Mrs. Angelini asking how she was getting along with the case. Okay? We have spoken to Mr. Adam, of course, as you might expect. He's conveniently forgotten about everything that he's got and has no documents to support any reply that he received from Mrs. Angelini, but we have a copy of his letter. We also have a copy of a letter dated the 12th of July 2001, which was almost a year after Mrs. Angelini was appointed. And this letter has her heading, Alicia Angelina, Procurator Fiscal, and it's specifically written to Anne and Hollie's solicitor at the time, telling them about certain progress or lack of progress in the case. But she was entirely involved in this, and we were able to pass those documents on to the First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, who has responsibility for her sort of appointment or dismissal last summer. So the Scottish Government, or the head of the Scottish Government, has known all that time that his Lord Advocate has lied about her involvement in this absolutely appalling case.
So
yet has refused to dismiss her.
And it might also then necessarily don't mean that she's been involved directly, but indirectly she's part of covering this up, obviously.
Oh, obviously, yes.
There's also a case a year after Hollie's case, the same thing. A little boy or girl, was it a boy, Robert?
Well, there were two. There was a little girl of 10 and a little boy of 7 were raped. And they also brought this, the rapist was a 22-year-old man who actually confessed to the rape. But in fact, no prosecution ever took place because of allegedly mistakes by Mrs. Angelini, who was in charge then, and this was being sort of documented in 2 of the major newspapers in Britain, the Telegraph and the Times, who I'm sure many of your listeners will know about.
Right.
This was documented on the 26th of May 2001. And again, Mrs. Angelini was responsible for that case not going ahead. And the same judge is who was presiding on it was the same judge as the one who assaulted Hollie.
Really, no?
Yes.
He dismissed the case.
This is a totally separate case, but the same sort of result happened.
Right. God, this is, well, you know, it's appalling to say the least. And what then is the reaction now, consequently, because this is, I mean, I personally heard about this now just a couple of months ago, I think, for the first time. And I know then, as you said, Anne, that you've been fighting this for about 10 years now. And it is certain things seems to be moving and shaking in terms of the Scottish political system, at least. We have recently now a guy called, was it Jonathan Brown, right, from the Scottish Labour Party quitting. Does this have anything at all to do with this story that seems to be kind of shaking the foundations of the whole Scottish political system over there, or what is that, do you think, Anne?
I'm not sure about that, to be quite honest.
It is difficult, actually, if I may say again, if you don't mind. It is terribly difficult to find out anything that's happening within Scotland. You might as well try to find out about what's happening in North Korea and the government circles as you might in Scotland. It's a totally secret society in many ways, totally covered up and totally controlled.
So what has any mainstream sources recognized your story yet, Anne or Robert?
No. We've had a story out with the News of the World. My daughter was actually awarded through the CICA, the criminal injuries, when I couldn't get any help. My concern was at the beginning of all of this, when they dismissed my daughter's case, that they had, tried, to sort of gag me and, frighten me to death by sectioning me and basically maligned my character, And I went to the charity Enable in Scotland, and they helped Hollie and I go to the criminal injuries because my concern was for Hollie's future. If, my brother was already dead, he'd been found in a burnt-out car on the outskirts of Aberdeen, and if anything happened to me, what would happen to my daughter? Because technically, there was nothing down in paper that her father had been raping her, since the age of 6. So when we went to the Criminal Injuries Board, we had to present all the documentation, the medical evidence, everything to them about Hollie's case. And we also had a letter from Grampian Police stating that on the balance of probability, Hollie's father was the main perpetrator of her sexual abuse, from the age of 6. And all that is, on record in Scotland. And so we now have got something official, on paper stating that, but Hollie was awarded 8,500 through the Criminal Injuries Board, but yet no crime or crime number has been committed.
See, that's totally illogical. Why would they give up money for
it? It is illogical, Henry, because according to all the legal experts, generally speaking, you cannot award public money to someone who has not been the victim of a crime.
Exactly.
It's not always possible to know the names of the criminals, of course, but it has to be established that a crime has been committed. Now, because the Scottish police took no action against Dennis Mackey or any of the other people involved, it then follows that no crime has ever been committed. So therefore, how could money be paid to someone who was officially not the victim of a crime?
Yeah.
It's never happened before, and this was the first time that it came into the public domain through one of the main papers, the News of the World, as Anne mentioned. They picked up on this survey, got all the legal advice they could possibly have, and they could say, well, obviously, it must be believed that she's been a victim of crime, but no crime has ever been recorded, and how can this be?
Yeah. And why don't we talk a little bit about your story as well in connection to this, Robert, because you've been arrested and gagged consequently when you began going into this subject, right?
Yes, I have. I mean, gagged to a certain degree, although, again, I have to say that I don't take kindly to being...
Only in Scotland.
Only in Scotland, yes. But I have to say I don't take kindly to being sort of lectures to how I should behave myself by representatives of a government that support the rape of children, support the rape of people with disabilities, support people being thrown into mental institutions if they've got temerity to challenge the authorities, and also are covering up for the murder of a good and innocent man. So I don't take lectures from governments like that, I have to say. Nevertheless, there are certain conditions which I have to be a little careful of, and will be a little careful at the moment, because obviously it would probably be less effective if I were incarcerated. And I can be held for 110 days without trial or anything like that, without any kind of representation at all, if the Scottish authorities should try to get hold of me. So I do have that hanging over me, and I know obviously they're a totally ruthless group of people and will do anything to actually suppress this case. But what happened leading up to the arrest was that I'd been campaigning very hard for many months. I came to the case just over a year ago, and we've been working very hard with the media especially, to bring it into the public domain. We've done a lot of things, sending out leaflets to people in areas where the paedophiles operate, and I also, because the Scottish media would not say very much, because they were actually being threatened by the Scottish government that they would be dealt with very severely if any mention of Hollie's case came up. I decided to make held a public meeting in Edinburgh on the 3rd of October last year, in which I named all the perpetrators that we knew of and all of the known victims. And I invited everyone to come along, people who represent the perpetrators, the police, the media who had not acted at all on the case. I invited them all to come along, and I would give them a platform if they wanted to explain their conduct as to what they had done or what they had not done and why. Obviously, we had quite a significant meeting there, but no one actually from the other side came to take the platform that I'd offered to them.
Yeah, of course.
And obviously, we've been pressing since then. There's all kinds of things that have happened in that particular time. But what I then proposed to do was to stand in we've got, as many of the listeners will probably know, we have a general election coming up here in the United Kingdom, which is expected to take place on the 6th of May. And I decided that I would stand in the constituency where most of the rapes and abuses took place, that is Aberdeen South, campaign just on one issue about Hollie's case. and I broadly advertised the fact that I was going up to Aberdeen, to a city I'd never visited before, to meet the local people and to introduce